All right. So thank you everybody for attending today. This week, the Meetup, we have Mohit from blaZop here to talk about their product and how it can fit, especially with delivering digital blueprint-based infrastructure and cloud automation. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Mohit.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. Just to introduce a little bit more, I am an ex-Cisco IT person. So, very similar to most of you. I come from the IT background, and I was fortunate enough to be speaking on network management, cloud automation, and IT operations topic at Cisco Live, being a Cisco speaker. Lately, we started this startup, the SaaS-based product, to digitize the end-to-end IT ops, and we will be covering how that helps in the business. So I'll just start sharing my screen, and I'll stop my video so that I can focus more onto the presentation and demo.
We can see it. It's coming through.
Great, thanks. So we're blaZop. blaZop is a digital platform. The objectivity is to digitize IT ops. And coming from IT background, the focus has been how can we make the IT simpler, faster, and better place to operate and work. So what is IT ops? Just to set the at the same level. IT ops refers to the end-to-end process of setup, design, configuration, deployment, and maintenance of the infrastructure. And that includes end-to-end process, all the way from planning to architecture to design to the deployment automation each of us build, being in IT. And then finally, how we operate it. So we are addressing that end-to-end process. So if you look into how most enterprises operate, there are two situations we will cover. One is from the service team perspective. The teams, like networking teams, they would have network architects, design engineers, operation engineers. Likewise, the cloud teams, cloud architects, and cloud DevOps now, and network DevOps as well. But there are multiple teams involved, multiple people involved for the single domain. And their operating model today for most part of infrastructure setup is the define, design, deliver, operate, and optimize. And traditionally, the define and design stage, where the architects and service team, service managers are usually involved in planning what is needed, what architecture we need to put together, whether it's a branch office setup, a cloud architecture setup, for example, setting up a data lake, data science, MLOps pipeline. So there is a whole architecture and design process involved. Once that has been, the design has been put across, then there is a delivery process involved of how do you set it up and configure that infrastructure for that use case. And finally, the operations teams get involved in operating it for multiple requests, such requests, the overall infrastructure, whether if it's a network operating team, there may be a remote office team, campus office team, corporate network team, DMZ network team, likewise in the cloud space, right? It could be Azure cloud teams or operations teams or Google Cloud or AWS Cloud. But in all, the life cycle, whether it's an IT infrastructure or a cloud infrastructure, the process by the service team is very similar, is being followed all across. The challenge which this leads to, the process is fine. Process is not an issue. The problem area is each team members or each team within the single domain follows its own siloed tools. For example, the design team will be following the visuals and PPTs to put their designs, which gets fairly fast obsolete when it goes to the deployment state. And this is where we see the challenges with the siloed and static tools. There's the out of sync designs. That's very common. We have seen situations, as I was speaker at Cisco Live, as well as we were seeing in house, is that the designs which were put together by the design engineers and architects were obsolete than what was reality. If there are 300 designs, 300 offices, 200 offices, chances are that it's very hard to figure out what design is running in which office. That leads to slower upgrades, more outages, lack of standardization, security issues, a lot of dead configuration sitting in your networking. Likewise, in the cloud space, you would see a lot of accounts, a lot of cloud services being provisioned for different scenarios, but they're just sitting in and people are not using it. So that leads to significant cost optimization issues as well as the security issues. Now, if we further add to it, if we look at from the IT customer perspective, it could be an application team, it could be the business team who's looking to set up a new office altogether. For them, if they have to deal with multi-domain services. So, for example, if the customer is an application team, and then this customer needs to deploy a microservices-based application on the cloud, needs to deal with security folks, platform folks, infra folks, the networking folks for establishing connectivity. Think about the customer experience. How will that in the mix of multi-domain services if somebody needs? And traditionally, 80 to 90% cases, the customer needs fall across multiple domains. So this complexity even get further, multi-folded. If each team is having their own operating process managed with separate tools and siloed tools, and now if the customer needs something, how that would be. So the same thing gets reflected into customer experience. So this leads to the challenges by personas, if you touch upon. For customer, it gets very hard to navigate through. That's why sometimes the app teams and IT customers complains that IT is slow because it's complex. Even if the teams are working very efficiently, it's a complex with multi-domain and multi-team structure. And that leads to slower delivery, more outages. Operations teams have to deal with it. There may be situations in your environment where ops team is completely blindsided in terms of what's running where, who is using it, what is it for, what was an SLA. And this is sometimes, from the technology perspective, we call it that we should have a CMDB, a configuration management database, where we have a central inventory of everything. But that's a technology answer. But the problem for operations teams always comes down to is they're blindsided. And for IT heads and leaders, the complexity is, in terms of the challenges they encounter is, they would outsource certain network infrastructure to other vendors. Cloud is outsourced to some other vendors. How someone else is doing the architecture, someone else is doing the operations. How do we bring all that space, the whole ecosystem? How do we really bring that to sanity? And how do we keep it operational? So how blaZop sees and we see to address it, coming from IT background, is we need to digitize this into IT ops processes. And what does digitization mean is we enable IT teams to design, build, and operate digital blueprints. That digital blueprints are simplifying the multi-teams, multi-domain, cross-domain complexity. So in a nutshell, if you think about the blueprint should include what kind of the services we are offering should have the service forms, your architectures, your designs, your templates, so to speak, the configuration templates, your deployment workflows. The deployment workflows could include the manual processes as well as automation processes. It could be an integration with third-party systems, or it could be, so everything should become part of a blueprint. So that is where blaZop is coming in. That it allows IT teams to design, build, and operate using digital blueprints. Second area is once we have those blueprints, how can we offer as an IT team, an IT organization, offer a self-service deployment experience? Why the customer has to engage with multiple teams, multiple domains for the need the customer has. And that's the second area we're saying is just make this whole self-service experience for customers and get their infrastructure in minutes. And third thing is break the silos, integrate, automate, and integrate every process. Even if it's a manual process, any deployment is happening through manual, orchestrate that manual process through process digitization and track what process, how much that process is taking time. So these are the three ways we we believe that the digitalization in IT ops will significantly address the challenges. Just to highlight where blaZop fits in overall scheme of the infrastructure space is, if you see this a 5-layer pyramid, which is fairly common in industry, speaks through, if you start from the bottom, network functions and equipment, that's something most likely, and this is as an example, same thing can apply to the cloud infrastructure. But if you look at from network functions equipments, mostly the vendors like Cisco, Juniper, Aruba, they will provide the equipment. They potentially will have the EMS systems embedded into it. It could be their own controllers for that matter, or NSOs type of product. Well, NSO sits in network management system. So they and network management systems where they talk about central inventory of configurations, all that stuff. The OSS layer, that's where blaZop is sitting at. The process, the IT ops processes end to end. And traditionally, this OSS layer is being very manually done today in siloed tools and statically. And then it does not even integrate with the systems like NMS or BSS for that matter. So blaZop is fitting into this OSS layer in digitizing the IT ops. Okay, the benefits, how we see it's going to return for the people who are using this platform, as in the customer experience as well as from the workforce excellence perspective. The kind of services which can benefit anyone who is operating cloud infrastructure services or network infrastructure or data center for that matter, or any of those other collaboration services, can literally operate and digitize their operating model using blaZop. Some of the transformation initiatives which happens in IT industry, as we have seen through our experience, as well as talking to various enterprise customers, whether some customers are looking for application-centric cloud automation, some are looking for running network as a service. How do I model network as a service into my operating experience? Some are looking for running IT as a service or hyperscale IT. Any of these initiatives can can be executed and realized, and can be modeled onto blaZop platform. So just to go into the demo scenario, we will just do the demo from two perspectives. One is the service team operating experience, that's situation one. And second is the customer experience, the customer engagement model, the situation two. So we will just touch upon how blaZop is addressing both situations, which we talked. So we will start with the, I will share screen. Let me know if you can see my browser.
Looks good.
Perfect. Thanks. So we touch upon we start with the customer experience first in a demo, and then we will jump onto the operating experience. Customer experience will take care of the overall, how the learnings and offerings stuff, how a customer can get the self-service experience to engage with IT services, which could be cross-domain, cross-team delivered, and track end-to-end process. So we'll touch upon the customer experience first, and then we will go into how service team need to operate to get to the customer experience. So jumping back to our product. Back to the product view. Hope you all can see. So if I start from the service experience from the customer perspective, you can literally, as an IT team, as an IT organization, you can build your own services, catalog you want to offer to IT customers to provide the self-service experience without engagement. So, for an example, if somebody needs to set up a branch office and the request comes from the business, you as an IT team can define your overall experience, how that should look like for the customer. So the customer experience would where customer will fill in the details, number of buildings, how many people will be sitting in, and can literally get the guided experience to fill in the business need instead of putting in the spreadsheet or emails or documenting it somewhere. Literally, you can fill all your details, and it's a fairly guided experience you can build on this platform as an IT organization, and go and have your customer go through this experience. Likewise, you can fill in the data for what kind of network services are needed, what kind of IP address you want to allocate, what kind of floor subnets you want to schedule, set up, how the connectivity to the WAN, to your site connectivity is going to be, who the connectivity providers would be, what would be the bill of material. And then the important part is that it also brings the architecture, the designs aspect to the experience. That for this kind of information, this is kind of an architecture you would get, and these are the services you can configure. If you already have those, so attaching the inventory from the operation perspective, you can also search into your inventory. Do I have these devices already which I can use, instead of creating new into my inventory? So the uniqueness of this experience provides the complete digital experience for customer, not to only fill the requirement they have, but also it generates the best design offered by the enterprise to their business. So if we change, for example, from 150 to 250 organization, then perhaps the system will ask different set of questions and also generate the new recommendation for the customer who's requesting in this case. So we're talking about digitizing that end-to-end experience for the customer. This as an example, if I pick some existing orders, you can also save the orders. There's a feature to it. But if you look at the delivery experience, this is a customer engagement experience, and so we're just picking up some existing order which were filled for demonstration's sake. And let's say we want to go and submit it. How would that experience would look like? So let's say the order is submitted, then the requester can come and track the order. So when the requester is coming and tracking the order, can get what all was submitted as a request info, what architecture was recommended by the system for this need, and also if you want to use further advanced features in the platform, it can also show the kind of configurations which will get applied to my network devices in this example. So think about from the planning and customer intent to architecture to deployment, and of course the configurations. Everything is all coming together on this visual experience. Now, not only that, you can also, as an IT requester or as a requester, you can also track the status. So it will also show, and this is all very visual experience. From the experience perspective, it's like as simple as you're doing stuff on visual. But this is all digital. Now, you can see that this request is waiting for approval. So let's say if we go and look at the actions. So yes, it's waiting for approval. So let's say approval is going to an executive level to approve. Approver can see what order was submitted. You can track down the whole thing. Besides, you can approve or reject. So let's say in this case we approve the request and go back to order. You can see that the order status has moved to the configuration deployment. So if I see and pick some of the devices and enable the configuration and show this is the devices. So you would see that all these configurations just got applied to it. It wasn't there before. And we can just go back and refresh, and it will say that yes, it has completed the deployment all the way to subscription, including the order. So literally, as a transparency and tracking of the progress as a customer experience, you can literally track it, everything. And also the invoice and cost it took to estimated cost and all that stuff. So going back to the customer experience where customer learns the offering through the catalog, start ordering experience, how the ordering looks like, track progress, and also manage data changes. You can also enable data offerings, value-add offerings. Like, okay, the office is set up. How do I do upgrades? How do I do updates to it? How do I add more capacity to it? All that stuff can be done as a self-service experience for customer. There are other examples. Likewise, you can build any kind of examples. You can have a two-tier architecture, how that looks like for AWS. You can build your Azure blueprints. You can also have your collaboration blueprints. As an example, if somebody wants to set up a Zoom conference rooms, you can also make it as a digital experience. All very visual, but programmable. Every element is programmable. And you as the IT team can define your own programs to this experience.
You showed an example there of like a branch router configuration. What if it's like an SD-WAN configuration out to these remote locations? Is that something that you can address as well?
Yeah, so the configurations is part of the blueprint. So I'll touch on to how the service teams can build that experience on the platform, because that's where the configuration will come in. That how do you build architectures, designs, configuration, attach configurations to the architectures and all that stuff. Basically, how do you create a blueprint in a nutshell? So we have a blueprint designer, and I'll touch upon that in a second.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'll start touching on the service team operating experience, that what service teams have to do to get the customer that kind of an experience is they can literally define the forms they want to ask customers to fill in. And this is a form designer, which is fairly advanced features, allows to the steps you just had seen that a customer was filling in for site, facility, info, or BOM details are all can be modeled here. So this is where you can even preview the step form, how the form looks like. You can define as complex forms as possible for you. So it's all drag and drop, low code, no code, pretty much. You can define your own service forms for that matter. It's a multi-guided step forms. So this helps teams, especially for the scenarios where they're trying to build IT or network as a service, a cloud as a service model, or infrastructure as a service model, to be able to define their own services and service models for that matter. But also, this is useful for customers navigating through their experience as well. Now, for the other thing where one of the flagship stuff we have is the Architecture Studio. So what teams, the architects, whether it's network architects, cloud architects, doing in Visuals or other tools, they can literally do it on one of our studio we offer. And Joel, this is where you can go and define your configuration. So you can attach the configurations, whether it could be a standard configuration models. For example, in networking, CLI-based configurations, you could have Ansible-based templates. You can have Yang-based models as well in networking. Likewise, if it's a non-networking infrastructure, if it's a cloud infrastructure, then you can attach your Kubernetes configurations, or Terraform configurations, or customized based configurations, which YAML files again, Kubernetes mostly, any of that, or Docker configurations for that matter. The beauty here is that once these blueprints are defined, so the architecture component of the blueprint is defined, the forms are defined, that becomes repeatable process. That's a significant value. We talking to one of the customers, the situation is that they have multiple data scientists coming in, and each data scientist needs a whole data science lab. Why the data scientist has to go through this hassle of talking to multiple teams to get the environment, which goes across multiple domains. So this is where we're trying to digitize the whole experience. Likewise, you can create if you have a DB to migrate to Amazon, you can create those blueprints. You can literally create anything which these cloud vendors are providing as a standard reference architectures can be completely digitized on this platform. So it's a multi-cloud, multi-domain, multi-vendor operating platform. Yeah. Now, likewise, what operations teams can also do is create the deployment workflows. So one of the deployment workflows that we had gone through is you can go and design your own workflow. And the experience is so simple that it looks like you're doing it on a PPT or Visio, but reality is each of these processes gets executed, tracked. You can even track it if something fails, for example, and at that stage, the deployment fails, you can even reinitiate the deployment. So we pretty much think about this whole experience is further automated. The platform also enables you to create your own custom processes. All we're looking for is Python skill set. That's it. You organization who wants to define their own processes can literally do so. All the one skill set is just Python to write your own custom processes. Now, this whole the orchestration process also allows us to integrate with any system for that matter. You can have integration to your SSH connections, Telnet, Git, ServiceNow. You literally can connect to Terraform scripts, the Jenkins queues, the DevOps process. So again, just going back to the diagram of where blaZop is fitting in is an OSS. We don't mean to reinvent the wheel on how network management systems are operating, like NSOs and controllers, how Terraform side of the house is doing it. They will continue to use. We're just digitizing the OSS layer. So how people are designing, planning, deploying, and operating the solutions for the business needs, that's the process we're trying to digitize. And the system allows to integrate with pretty much any of your network management or cloud management systems or tools and scripts for that matter. It can also integrate if you have your own in-house systems. You can integrate through Kafka. You can integrate through direct database access, or you can activate through any of the API calls for that matter, which can be invoked. We have built-in integrations with various technologies so that even the integration becomes seamless. Some of the known technologies we're providing out-of-the-box integration with further low to no code model, just the configurations to connect to any of these systems to do the further automation. So let's say if an organization is following the CI/CD pipeline for Terraform deployment, then that's fine. Let's say they're using Jenkins as an example, then all it needs is that workflow in the process of the workflow. It just calls the Jenkins integration, and it calls the Jenkins workflow sitting on customer's environment and initiating the whole deployment process. Okay.
I must have missed something here. I apologize. The Kafka integration, obviously, we were talking about that a little bit earlier here. what are you publishing? What are you publishing into Kafka? Any in particular, or is it just in general?
Sure. So if you look into, that's a very good point, right? If you look into what is actually, when someone is executing this workflow, something is coming to it, right? What is that coming to it? It's an order which is coming to it, which we had just seen from the service experience. So when an order is submitted, all these details are coming to that workflow, which user has submitted it. Now, if you see, there is another view to look into the order experience. You can see that if you see the data, all this data is coming in. What the number of buildings, number of floor. This is in the case of branch office setup. Site code, head count, what organizations will be sitting in, bill of material, all that. So what you are seeing visually in architectures and configurations and the forms, everything gets generated as a data structure for you to play with. So think about this whole payload can be fed into Kafka topic, and your listener and the enterprise Kafka listener is listening, okay, I got a new branch office request. I want to know what IP address allocation is being set up, what floor subnets I need to do, how many Ethernet ports I need to do. Well, I take all the data from this payload and feed it to my inventory system so that I can do the better planning. Maybe that's a process. That's a process. Perhaps after approval, you want to add here that, update my inventory.
I still didn't understand what are you publishing to Kafka and who's going to receive those messages?
So so let me show you in another way. So let me know if you can see the presentation. So traditionally, if you see, so if you look at this customer private network here on the right, every enterprise customer would potentially will have their own systems they're using to manage their infrastructure, most likely. The network management system, cloud management system, they may have their own inventory as well. Now, whatever you're getting here from their customer order, all the details of what details they're filling in, what architecture has been selected, the configuration which got generated, all that information is coming to on-prem through the controller. But coming back to your Kafka point, let's say this integration between the blaZop to the on-prem applications is happening through Kafka.
Okay, but you're just assuming that the customer has something to a client to pull that off and that configuration data off and then do something with it. You don't.
Yes, if they do.
Okay. Are you aware of any customers that are using a Kafka as a means to provision their network infrastructure?
So it's been, I mean, so the Kafka side of it is largely being used not for provisioning as much as we notice for networking infrastructure, but for cloud, we see quite a bit, but not for networking. For networking infrastructure, people are using Kafka more for operational use cases, which is your monitoring and event generations and things like that. That's where Kafka is coming in. What I was highlighting here is that we have the capability to integrate on-prem systems through various means, REST API, CLI call, shell script call, through Kafka, through RabbitMQ. So I was just touching upon that, the possible built-in integration we already offer out of the box from the product, which help us integrate with the customer applications seamlessly without the code.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay. So you're doing the schema representation. So you're assuming that the consumer of those messages is you publish the schema that you're sending to them, and then they're going to have their application take all or part of that data and then well, you said you don't really have anybody doing that, but do some configuration with it. Okay. All right.
No, so I would add to it a little bit. So the model, which is and the data on the model which is coming to customer, those models are also defined by the customer on the platform.
Okay.
So these models, what the form I was sharing is just created some for representation's sake. But again, blaZop is acting as a platform, SaaS platform, where the application teams or IT teams or networking teams can create their own model. So the forms generates the model, and forms are designed and defined by the service blueprinting of enterprise.
So where's the feedback loop then? So let's say you publish this, the customer's private network, they have something to pull that off and make a configuration changes. How do you do the feedback loop that configuration change is success or failed?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a very good point. So there are various. So the way controller works is it sends the traffic and connects with all the on-prem controller, which goes with it. It communicates with the app. Any response, it comes back, respond back, and move to the next process in the orchestration. Now, there is also, that's for synchronous behavior. But for asynchronous behavior, there's a possibility that these apps are taking time. For example, Terraform and Jenkins, right? They take fairly long time. Terraform complex infrastructure may take 20 to 30 minutes, right? As one process. Likewise, Jenkins pipelines can take fairly long. So there is also a methodology within a controller as a webhook where these systems can communicate back through webhook back to the next process in the orchestration. So we have a webhook-based integration, standard REST API-based integration. The communication can come back through messaging layer, be it Kafka, RabbitMQ, any AMQP platform, whatsoever.
On your diagram here, what you show in the customer private network as a blaZop controller, that's really less of a controller, more of a mid in ServiceNow terminology would be a mid server. Is that correct?
Yeah, integration server, mid server.
Okay.
Controller we're just calling is controlling the traffic and the flow. But yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Now, what this leads to, all this digitizing this process leads to a central inventory. That's something we are all looking for, usually in the enterprise space. Do I have a most accurate CMDB? And how things are connected. So if I want to see that, I see a lot of items in my CMDB, I can see how they're connected. So I just want to know how gateway 1 is connected to. And it says that it is connected to 3 devices, another gateway and 2 other switches. So now you suddenly started getting relationship information for a given CI. And if you want to know what is the context, then it brings that, the living, active architectural view of how things are connected. So think about from the operations perspective, when operations says that they're blindsided, now suddenly the architecture and the connectivity and inventory is all coming together. I mean, obsolete architectures is out the door. It's crossed out because now the architectures are not static; they're digital. Your design processes, your designs are not static; they're digital. Your workflows, your deployment workflows are tracking any and every process so that you can know which are red tape process we can optimize. and which are real processes where we need to further improve on. But this is also generating a center inventory where it gives you the end-to-end view of it. So now if operation sees any outage on, let's say, application load balancer, says that show me the dependency view in the dependency browser, or the load balancer is connected to my, two microservices, one UI and Python. And if you want to say Python is connected to, Redis and load balance and a DB service, DB is connected to, so now you're just walking through the traffic of inventory. Go ahead.
One question I have is on that example you showed with the branch office, right? Generally, so if you build a capability in for someone to order that would have a task that requires procurement and hardware's got to come online, at what point, what would be the trigger to say, okay, the hardware is where it's supposed to be, it's ready to be, have its configuration applied, be
Sure.
provisioned? How does that work?
Sure. No, that's a very good point. So if you look into the area which we did not touch upon is when you're designing a workflow, you would have, let's say, I don't know if you touched upon it, you would put a manual process. So let's say we put once the bill of material has been initiated, we put a manual process for deployment. So you can say that, and we can move this to, let's say, deployment, verification process, right? You can just name whatever you want. For example, so now this verification process should, be right after bill of material, right? Processor. So what you would do is you would say that, let's move this back, let's move it here, and I'm introducing this verification process and then connecting it now. And now what happens is, you would say that who would be doing this verification? Let's put in all people, emails or groups for that matter. Let's say it's the, me doing the verification. So the moment you put those group emails and all that stuff, they will get notified. And so coming back to your point, there will be also having an action available waiting here to go and mark it complete. So this is an approval example, but I can also show, a non-approval example where you can go and fill in the details. Let's see, you can say, service on approval. Different. But yes, I mean, I don't have an example here. They're all approval request, but yeah, that's like architectural checklist, right? In this case, so you can literally have additional information where user can fill in. You can define that what kind of information you want that action to fill in as a verification process. And once you mark it complete, the process will move to the next one.
Okay, so
yeah,
and then the process itself would wait there for however long it took for that.
Exactly.
That to be
20 days, 30 days, 1 month, 2 months, whatever it is. The beauty comes down to is when we're talking about the process digitalization, bring the insights into what kind of processes are taking the most time, so that the business can start making some decision how do we further optimize them. But you're right, they will just sit there forever until it's been marked.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we have lots of AI ML stuff coming up in that space. We built already a few, and then a few more is coming up. Maybe we can have another session for that if there's an interest onto it.
What are your for the customers that you do have? What are the top, 3 or 4 use cases that people are using it for?
Yeah, so there are few. In the networking side, we just started to talk to the potential customers. We're doing a lot of branch sites. They're doing a lot of new branch sites deployment. There are a lot of in the banking side, a lot of virtual banks concept is coming up. How do we set up those? So that is also coming up. So they're looking for anything you think about. A repeatable process, whether it's a site deployment, cloud deployments, MLOps deploy infrastructure setup, all that, anything which is repeatable. Those are becoming common use cases where people are coming to us. Even for that matter, SaaS business, if you look at, they have a SaaS ops model, right? SaaS ops is, if I'm a SaaS business, and I need to deploy my SaaS to customer cloud account, how would I do it? How can I make it, seamless experience without spending my DevOps cost, significant DevOps cost, right? How do I track it? How do I know what features have been enabled for that SaaS? The whole activation process, the whole deactivation process if customer trial is over, so that your costs are not, ongoing basis. You're not paying for it if things have been completed. So that whole lifecycle management, that's also becoming a very interesting scenario where customers are coming to us.
Okay, and then so if a service is ordered through the solution, and they're complete, you can go through a lifecycle process to destroy the service as well.
Correct. So there's a whole subscription gets created, and not only destroy the whole process, but also you can make changes to the existing deployment. So that's what I was talking about, day two services or value add services. Some people use value add, some call it day two, some call it operational services, right? Because the deployments are happening once, and most of the time you're doing update, upgrades, changes to the existing deployment. But yes, end-to-end lifecycle management. That's right.
Okay.
And these are all coming, from the background of IT itself. I mean, we have been on the same similar shoes as, most of us, who work in IT and cloud environment. And these were the things we were, encountering and seeing those challenges, the OSS challenges and IT ops challenges, which is causing, even if we, no matter how, you know, strong, technical knowledge we have, but the processes, right, which very hard to operate and manage, and especially when it goes to multi-teams, multi-vendor, multi-domain. How do we really digitize that end? That's the place we are coming in.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to go through this with us today, and thanks, Nick, for doing all the work of setting this up. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It was informative, and looking forward to, as we get continued feedback from others that catch the session after the fact. And just want to say thanks. And for everybody out there, we will get the slides from Mohit, and we will get those posted with the recording as well on the Meetup community, and we'll go from there. So with that, we'll wrap it up, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mohit.